Just for me to inspect.
So Tyler,
Evelyn's sleeping.
Okay. Now, enough of the frivolity. Call the meeting to order. So Jewel, are you with us? No, okay. Agenda. Any additions to the agenda this evening? Yes.
5.1, so from Business Arising, a housing speaker program update, there'll be a verbal report.
Okay. 5.1.
Housing speaker program update?
Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Okay, motion to adopt the agenda. Seconded, all in favor. That's approved. Now we have public comments. Who have we got tonight, Tyler? Gary Anderson.
You,
Good evening, Gary.
how you doing?
Pretty good.
I've been asking for the Islands Trust and where the money's spent. So I got this from the community hall. I had my daughter go through the computer trying to find it. It's buried in, but this is what the best I can come up with. And I would just really like to know how much money, last year we spent $240,000, I understand, and $293 this year coming up. And if that's the case, how much was actually spent on Bowen Island? Did it build a park, or is it gonna pay for the new fire hall, or is anybody else, where does the money go? And if all these other islands, again, Salt Spring, Maine, how much do they actually spend on doing something for them? Maybe a kid's swimming pool here, or fire hall, or skating rink, swimming pool, where does all the money go? So I have a question. I was gonna get a petition going, people ask me, well, how much money you spend on Bowen? I said, I don't think there's very much spent on Bowen Island, but I don't know.
Well, thank you for that in-depth presentation, Mr. Anderson. I think it's fair to say that other people have asked this question. And luckily, we have two Islands trustees that are actually members of council. Now, we're not going to delve into this evening because we do have a full agenda, and one could talk on that particular subject for a very long time. The only thing I'll say is that the municipality itself does not levy that tax. We are instructed by the province to collect that money and forward it on. So it really is an Islands Trust issue. But possibly at a future time, we could have the Islands trustees share with you, possibly via email, what there's a breakdown, there's a reason, it's all that stuff that's there.
It sounds like it's a schoolyard bully getting money out of us, 300 grand going out the window to me, and I just like, I don't know, I seen this sheet here.
2 minutes?
Okay, we are going to let Allison spend 2 minutes explaining this to you.
Thank you.
You're right, this is the proposed 2018 budget, and we pay a share of the $1,180,000 number for Trust Council, and of the $737,000 number for Trust Fund Board. And that number is, the amount we pay is set by the Islands Trust Act and provincial legislation, and we pay a proportionate share based on assessed values. Our assessed value as a percentage of the assessed value of the whole trust area is 18%. So basically we pay 18% of the 1.1 and of the 737. There's a little bit of massaging that goes on because there's election costs in there that we don't pay a share of. Back in 2000, when we incorporated, our share percentage assessed values was 13%. The other reasons are that there's just been a general increase in both Trust Council and Trust Fund Board. Trust Fund Board holds a few properties here on Bowen, so they do spend some money on the management of those properties. But other than that, I can't point to specific services like garbage or a bus or things like that, no. I don't know. Sue Ellen's on the Trust Programs Committee, which looks after trust area services, and they do a lot of advocacy work on behalf of the whole trust area.
I'll just take a few minutes.
No, two.
One,
You get two.
two. Okay, so, as a trustee for the Islands Trust, we're part of Preserve and Protect the whole blue zone between Victoria and Vancouver. And that's the Islands Trust area. It's partly why Bowen is still beautiful and still rural. So some of the things that the Islands Trust does for Bowen, as Allison says, it's not like there's an individual charges like garbage or anything. But as part of the whole trust area, we receive advocacy. For example, and there's one of the information items, our chair is off to Ottawa to talk about tankers, to talk about derelict vessels with the legislators, the committee that is about to put it through its second reading. So some of these are federal laws that he's talking about, and there are other ones too, including local ones, protecting glass, sponge reefs, all of those kinds of things. We have a program on Bowen called NAPTEP, the Natural Areas Tax Exemption Program. If you are somebody with a natural area and dreams for your land, you can apply, and you might be able to get your taxes reduced. We have nature reserves, several of them. Some of them are worth more than $1 million if you just had to buy them. So they obviously save up for those. And they take management, and then they also, the Islands Trust helps with the OCP and referrals and data and mapping, like the eelgrass beds around Bowen, and all kinds of things like that, some of which are green infrastructure that has been identified all kinds of places as where we get our water from, part of our economic resources for Bowen Islands, why people visit here. And so all of those things are related to the amount that you pay, which is less than TransLink, less than school tax, and less than police tax. And you can find that information on your tax slip, and anybody can email me and I'll be happy to talk to you more.
Thank you, Sue Ellen. Aren't you glad you asked her?
So I just want to know if they spent any money on Bowen, like, I just like to see something, a kid's swim pool or something, I'd like to see a skating or something.
I
Something
know.
that's, you can look at and touch and, you
Yeah,
know, some flowers or
you're just
park
an
gardens, I don't know.
just an old-fashioned guy. Eh? So, thank you, sir. Who's next up, Tyler? Mr. Pete Taggart? Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Thank you very much for giving me a few minutes to talk about surprise compost. But really it's about the Environment and Climate Action Committee. Just a little bit of history. I guess on December the 19th, a strategic planning session was held, and it was decided at that time it was premature to proceed with the feasibility study. On January the 19th, the council, the memo from the CAO said that council would not proceed with a feasibility study for on-island composting. February the 7th, the CAO passed on a memo, short email to myself and to Mary Ellen DeGrace, just saying for your info, and so we had this information. Just a word on that. This is the first time that I had heard, this was on February the 7th, about this decision. And I just felt that I can be at fault for not following all of this, I admit, on the web. But I wasn't aware that such a proposal was being made, and I thought it, to be frank, a little disappointing that nobody would take it on themselves to let me know. And enough on that one. There was no technical reason given for this decision. Anyway, moving forward, and this relates to the Environment and Climate Action Advisory Committee. It stated the committee will provide advice and recommendation on environmental issues, including solid waste, including garbage, recycling, and composting. My question there is, really, how likely is it, given our performance on the on-island composting committee, that we are going to get anything done in that regard at all. In the last 18 months, there has been nothing done at all by the committee. Nothing. There's been no meeting. There's been no money spent. There has been nothing done. And the champions, and I use the word from the Climate Action Advisory Committee, the champions who are going to be looking after the composting in the future are the same champions who, I'm afraid, may be busy and maybe there's all kinds of reasons, but they have done nothing in the last 18 months. My fear is that we're paying lip service to this, and we should either decide that we're going to go ahead and look into composting seriously, or let's not fool people and just say, forget it, we can't do it for now, 2, 3 years down the road or whatever. But keeping people in limbo, there are so many people, organizations, so many consultants who have made recommendations that we go ahead with consulting, and yet I can't wrap my head around this, that it doesn't seem to faze council or staff. It just, we seem to be ignoring all of the wishes and the advice that come from experts. The reasons given for not progressing with this study: significant capital and ongoing operational costs. There is no capital. There is no ongoing operational cost. This is a study at no cost to the municipality. No cost, not 1 cent. Next one. Cost predicated on allocation of municipal land. Many identified priorities the council should review before making a commitment. I couldn't agree more. The composting is one of many, but it should be one of many. It should not be ignored. And lastly, I guess this is the one I have a real, I just can't believe this. The need for municipalities' solid waste management contractor to inform and support any on-island composting project. This is one of the 3 reasons for not going ahead. Why hasn't there been any contact with the contractor, in this case, Bowen Waste, in the last 18 months? I saw this, I picked up the phone, I called Louise, in 2 days I sat down, we talked about this. This is one of the reasons we're not advancing, because we're not communicating. I just sat down for an hour and a half with her, and she is as keen on composting as anybody around this table, to the point where she's actually doing research on her own. So I guess my bottom...
Okay, Pete, can you wrap it up pretty quickly?
Yep.
Because we're way past the time.
Okay. I just want to know if there's a political will to go ahead or not. I just want to thank Nick Nack Nook for giving the $10,000. But it wasn't easy for them to give that money, and now it's going to go back. I want to talk briefly about Bowen Waste, who are doing one hell of a good job. 15% of the ferry fares gone up. Metro ticket fees up 34%.
Please, sir. I'm going to have to touch on, when we get into the ferry fares with garbage trucks, we've kind of moved a little off base here.
Well, you actually haven't. Let me say one last thing and then congratulate the residents of Bowen Island. They have achieved a 75% diversion rate, which is probably in the top percentile of the whole of the province.
Thanks, Pete. And just to wrap that up, you deserve a response and you will get one.
Thanks.
Okay? Thank you.
Ms. Alcoff Victoria.
Good evening, madam.
I'm going to talk about the preventing of industrial logging on Bowen Island, your worship and councillors. Industrial logging ought not be considered anywhere on Crown lands of Bowen Island, given the fragility of the island ecosystems that supply the totality of our yearly fresh water. Those ecosystems are increasingly affected already by climate change, particularly in the summer months, and they would not recover for several decades from intensive logging. This is what we have witnessed for the past decades with the clear-cut logging of large developments on private land at Cowan Point and Cape Roger Curtage. Large-scale erosion occurred at Cowan Point with an attempt of mitigation still visible at the Seymour Bay Park. Complete ecosystem, fauna and flora have been wiped out as a result of the logging, and there is no visible substantial signs of recovery. Council must oppose any industrial proposed logging of Bowen Island Crown land and must request of the Minister of Forest, Lands, Natural Resources Operation and Rural Development that he takes the appropriate measure at his disposal to remove Bowen Island Crown land from the potential reserve of the Chilliwack Forest District. As a matter of fact, all islands in Howe Sound should be set in a category of their own by the Minister of Forest, Lands, Natural Resources Operation and Rural Development, given their unique environment resulting of the unique location in which they are situated and their limited forested areas, mainly on rocky ground. It would allow to protect them permanently from the potential desire of later governments to consider the exploitation of their limited natural resources. We owe to protect our island environment for the following generations.
Thank you.
We have Glenn Cormier.
Mayor and Council, and thank you for a few minutes of your time. In regards to the federal government's plan to legalize recreational cannabis this summer, as well as the provincial decision to allow for a private sector licensing program to be introduced this spring, I would like to inform you of my intent to submit an application to the Liquor Control and Licensing Branch for a retail cannabis license on Bowen Island. The LCLB application process is very clear in that local government has the ability to decide not only if a license should be issued, but how many, where they can be located, and who should hold them. As a commercial property owner, a business operator, and a liquor primary license holder in good standing, I believe I'm a good candidate for consideration to be granted a retail cannabis license within our community. I'm asking council that when my application comes before them this spring, to pass a special resolution in support of granting me a license. Prior to submitting my application to the LCLB, I will be seeking to ensure proper zoning requirements are met for my property. I am asking council to direct staff to guide me in the right direction. In reference to tonight's agenda item 10.1 under new business, I understand council will be having some discussions on how to handle the zoning requirements for cannabis retail sales on Bowen. I would encourage council to avoid a blanket rezoning of the Snug Cove Village commercial properties in order to meet the needs of any number of potential applicants. Instead, I would urge council to consider applicants on a case-by-case basis. I believe it is important to give the community an opportunity to provide feedback in regards to specific applications and operators. In saying that, I am fully prepared to submit a rezoning application for my own property prior to federal legalization and prior to my provincial licensing application being submitted. I strongly believe that retail stores in this new industry should meet the expectations of the community they operate in. I would strive to ensure a highly professional operation that breaks free of the stereotypes associated with this business and helps to educate the people we serve. I'm a very strong proponent for public safety and protecting young people, and I believe I have shown that in my liquor primary business. I look forward to working with staff and council on this endeavor, and I hope that Bowen Island can set the example for other small communities when it comes to this progressive new industry.
Thanks, Mike. Let's call Jewel. Hey, Jewel!
Thank you very much.
There she is. So, you get it.
Amen. Look at my son.
Here
I
we
know,
have,
isn't he amazing?
very own certificate of appreciation. For your extraordinary efforts in behalf of us when you're very marginal. Keeping all
It
those
was
people
my
in line,
pleasure. It was
keeping
my-
a sense of humor.
Yes.
Yeah, here, here.
It was my pleasure. It was my pleasure.
And thanks for sharing your mom with us. Thank you very much. Bye.
That was not a nice little break.
Next up, Ms. Susan Swift, please.
Have we anyone else? Pat? Oh,
Hi there.
hi.
Susan Galtero, resident, Susan Swift.
Hi.
Hi. I had the really great experience, fortunate accident today to turn on a live feed of this group and the meeting of the committee as a whole, whatever, which was great. I got to hear what your thinking is about Lot 1, since some of us have given public comment in open houses and with presentations. And I was really, really impressed to read a lot of the materials and to watch you all in action. And I just want to thank you for your dedication and thoughtfulness. Everybody, I mean, you guys work really, really hard. And you put yourselves out there, and it can be emotional at times, I can see that. There's a lot of sacrificing that goes on in that. But in light of all that I heard, I still have a couple of points, all I heard and read. It does seem that the community needs to have more opportunity, not just to hear what's going on, but to give input. And as you've seen in the letters and every time that we meet on zoning issues, the community is really still, obviously, and you are too, focused on affordable housing before the light industrial or other tourist business interests. So I really took away from what I saw a need for a community process that looks at all of the community lands, because if you start parceling it out for housing here or not housing here, then people say, well, where does the housing go then? So you kind of have to, I think, in order to get the community on board, have a comprehensive plan where we do see where the housing is going. Because otherwise, we'll say, well, that's, we'll use our brains, and we haven't done all the research you have, and we'll say, well, it doesn't make sense there. Why are you putting light industrial there where it's perfectly ideal, it seems ideal to a layperson to put housing there because it's easier to build than some of the other sites. So I think that's probably my main point, is to try to look at the whole. And I also liked hearing about the possibility of not continuing to envision the light industrial as live work, which may be an old concept which hasn't worked out in all places. And we may not need to bring more tourism kind of interest to studios there, but to leave it open so that's a possibility, but also to have the mixed use so you could have the housing upstairs. I thought that was really brilliant to open that up and not to predetermine it as live work space. That's about all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Brent O'Malley, please.
Yeah, hi everyone, and thank you. And to reiterate what Susan just said, we watched the video feed together today, and again, we very much appreciate all the work that all of you do. Regarding Lot 1, I'd just like to mention, quote a couple of things in particular. The mayor responded via email to something that Peter Frinton had written, and on January the 26th stated in response that, quote, because we need community input as far as the rezoning process, end quote, it seems that we should have the community input before the rezoning, before the first reading, which is set for tonight. And so I'm thinking that the cart is a little bit in front of the horse here, and that there really has not been the discussion that needs to be generated, that the input that needs to, that you need to hear before we start moving down the rezoning process. As you know, in one of the attachments in the agenda tonight, the Advisory Planning Commission supports Area 2 development of up to 20 residential units, and, quote, supports attached dwellings. If dwellings were to go forward on Area 2, I would strongly encourage the Mayor and Council to consider deleting the word supporting attached dwellings and insisting on attached dwellings. It would be much more affordable. Just through the Belterra experience, we know that we were able to keep our costs down because we were, again, rigorous in watching our bottom line. And costs in building in that particular area can get out of control, I think, quickly. And if we're trying to create affordable housing, then that would single-family dwellings would be really not the way to accomplish that. Finally, the Agricultural Land Commission notes that an exclusion would need to be filed for Area 4 that takes 60 to 90 days, and that it is, according to them, quote, premature to consider bringing bylaw 432 and bylaw 433 forward for first reading during this meeting tonight as proposed, particularly given the fact that there is no guarantee of ALC approval for the proposed exclusion application, end quote. So again, I would like to suggest that considering first reading tonight is premature. There hasn't been enough work in garnering the community support, nor clearly the support from the Agricultural Land Commission that would be needed to amend these bylaws. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
That wraps public comments up.
Okay. Okay, thank you. That's a lot more than we usually get. Aren't you glad you all chose tonight to come? Okay, so, one more little thing. Raj is here. I'd like to introduce you all to our new Chief Financial Officer, Raj here, who has recently joined the municipality. Excellent background in municipal finances, and he's going to find money for all these things that we've come up with.
Welcome, Raj.
Okay. Consent agenda. Anyone want anything pulled?
Yeah, I'm trying to find another. The 3.12.
3.12, Environment and Climate Action Advisory Committee Terms of Reference. Oh, those are always fun. Okay, put that one on at the end. Anything else? Okay, motion to adopt the consent agenda, seconded. All in favor? And that's passed unanimously. Next up, we have a delegation. Hey, Tim, come on down.
Well, actually, Sherry's going to come first.
Ah, let's bring two chairs then. Oh, okay.
We're gonna rotate.
Fair enough.
As Tim says, he'll be the
Egg?
the
The
rose, he's the tail on this one, yeah, the thorn and the roses and all that kind of thing. All right, so thank you all, council, mayor, for giving us a few minutes tonight, well, actually 20 minutes, or 45, what do we have, 45?
As long as you need.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, thank you for granting us this opportunity to present to you our proposal for building a community-owned health center on Lot 3 here on Bowen. What we're going to, well, first of all, what we'd like to do is just give a little bit of appreciation for our board of directors who has worked extraordinarily long and hard over many bumps to keep this initiative going. So thank you to Bill Brown, to Crow Lucas, Ken MacArthur, Colleen O'Neill, Tim Rhodes, Bruce Wallace, and myself. I'm also a board member now. What we're going to talk about over the next, we're going to try to take about 20 minutes for this presentation so that we've got lots of time for your question, because I'm sure you'll want some engagement in this proposal. Colleen and I are going to start out by talking about the need for a health center here on Bowen Island. We'll talk about the health center itself, what our vision is, what that solution is. We'll take a look at what the work to date is, and then Tim's going to come on and really then get into the details of the feasibility site planning work that we've done, and also making recommendations for our next steps. Let me start by the ask, and I'm just going to read this along with everyone else. So, the Bowen Island Health Center Foundation is requesting that the municipality provide a portion of Lot 3 on the community lands abutting the southern boundary of the fire hall site, 109 feet in width and running east from Millers Road to the boundary of Crippen Park, and agree to a 90-year lease of the property at a nominal rate with an option to renew, to waive all municipal fees related to any rezoning, development, and building on the property, and provide municipal water and sewer service connection to the building and waive any fees or costs related to the work. Now, the Bowen's community lands are an absolute valuable asset to all of us. There's lots of needs and wants that have been identified in the community. We've got our fire hall and emergency service center. We have light industrial. We have tourist accommodations. We have a community center. We have accessible housing. And also we want to be able to sell some of our lands in order to pay down some of our debt. What we want to do now is take just a few minutes to review with you the evidence we see as to why a health center is really a high priority for the community and is in fact being very responsive to the community needs for the use of this small piece of community lands. In 2015, we conducted a survey with Bowen Island residents. The purpose and objective of that survey was to really better understand what the primary care needs and usages of Bowen Islanders are. We had 558 respondents to the survey. The highlights of the data actually tell I think, a quite disturbing story. So let me just kind of run through these. We found that 41% felt, in fact, that their health is at risk because they live on Bowen Island. 34% reported long-term or chronic health issues. 47% experienced difficulty getting timely access simply because the services aren't available here in Bowen. 51% actually delayed seeking care because the services weren't available in Bowen. 45% felt that delaying care made the problem worse. 23% have actually considered moving off of Bowen for access to primary care. 63% said that a health center would definitely improve health. And 93% said that they would in fact use a health center on Bowen. Now, in addition to this quantitative data, we also received about 90 pages of comments. Right? So these are people at night typing all these additional comments. And we got a lot of stories about people's specific and very personal health experiences, and really the distress that they suffered due to the lack of accessible on-island health services. Another important source of the priority that Bowen places on on-island healthcare is from the vital conversations that the Community Foundation has held. The first one was in 2014, and then we just held another one just last year. All of you have recently received the report of the Vital Conversations. In both 2014 and 2017, as you see, healthcare services were identified as priorities for Bowen. In particular, for basic, urgent, and specialized healthcare services, including support for people with mental health issues and addictions. Now, Our young families and seniors are particularly vulnerable. According to the last census, we have 17% of our residents that are 14 years and under. We have 21% that are 65 and over. So that's almost 40% of our population that probably aren't likely to be already on the mainland commuting, and can therefore just stop in at their doctor's office. Beyond the emotional and physical stress of the limited on-island healthcare that we have, we also identified that there's an economic cost to our community. We did granted a fairly high-level analysis. We looked at the lost income, lost opportunity to our local businesses, looked at the cost of the ferry, the lost income to patients, and the lost revenue to our local GPs. Based on 65% of the population currently with an off-island GP, we estimated that we have a loss to the island of almost $1 million a year. If only half of those people could get their general practice on island, their basic service on island, that would be a gain to the island economy of $500,000 a year. Okay, Raj, you can look at our numbers later.
No pressure.
Can you see it for me? I'm stuck. Yeah.
Now's the time to tap dance with the
Keep going. All right, I'll go from here. And finally, the need is clearly stated in our OCP. In section 3.9, the public facility and institutional land use management, objective 97 states that to ensure that sufficient space, do I have it yet? Oh, okay, let me go to where we are. Here we go, okay. Thank you. So objective 97, to ensure that sufficient space is reserved within Snug Cove Village so that a range of core community uses can be accessible to all members of the community and meet present and future demands. And particularly the need is laid out in 8.2, Community Facilities, Policy 372. The municipality will work to ensure that the needs of Bowen Island residents are addressed, particularly in establishing an integrated health clinic. Can't get more clear than that. So we believe that the voices of the community are loud and clear on the need and the priority for accessible healthcare services on Bowen Island. It's a priority. It's a very, very good use of this land. I'll turn it over to Carolina.
Okay, so what's the solution to this high priority need for Bowen Island? Gabriola has similar challenges, and it's always been a template for the work that we've done here on Bowen Island because similar population and 20 minutes to the mainland. Gabriolans had lots of challenges around healthcare. Most of the islanders got their care off island. All of their urgent and emergency situations relied on transfer to the mainland via ambulance service. Gabriolans felt that their health was at risk, and especially after a couple of near tragic events, which was kind of the catalyst for them moving forward with saying, okay, it's about time we had our own community-owned health center. There were naysayers, just like there will be on Bowen Island, and some of the people have asked us and asked people in Gabriola, what if people that get their care off island don't come back and use the health professionals that we now have in our new health center? Well, and will it make a difference to their health care? Vancouver Island Health Authority did a study shortly after the clinic was up and running, not many months down the road, and showed that the number of residents using on-island doctors doubled very early on from 36% to 73%. Anecdotally, I've now been told that it's now closer to 85%. 75% of patients who were transferred to the mainland for emergency services now get their treatment on island, because a lot of those emergencies are really urgent care issues that aren't life-threatening, but can be dealt with on island with a good team of practitioners. Not only did the health center on Gabriola prove to give, great healthcare improvements for the residents, it had a positive impact on their economics. Business stayed on the island. Quote, there was an immediate impact on the emergency room in Nanaimo. This is from the Vancouver Island Health Authority. There were estimates that as many as 90% of transfers to the Nanaimo Regional Hospital could have been dealt with on Gabriola, saving Vancouver Island Health Authority more than $200,000 a year, as well as lives. That's not to minimize sometimes the trauma and impact of actually having to deal with transporting off island, when you're sick and frail and have health issues. Okay. So our vision. We envision a community-owned health center where we will all on Bowen Island have access to health care when we need it. A health center with expanded primary care services. So we mean by that more hours, more coverage on Bowen, and more doctors working on Bowen. Our ultimate goal is to have 24/7 coverage available to Bowen Island residents and visitors. We need more practitioners to provide that. It's impossible to recruit doctors these days without a facility that they can easily have a turnkey operation and come to Bowen Island. We hope that our health center will be a place not only for primary care and urgent care needs, but also for community outreach for health care, like public health, life labs, mental health, allied health professionals like physio, public health immunizations, and then Vancouver Coastal Health nursing, nursing care aides working out of there, and Vancouver Coastal Health chronic disease services. So things like asthma clinics, COPD clinics, arthritis clinics, they have those on the North Shore. They're willing to come here. We've talked to Vancouver Coastal Health, but they need a space to do it. Okay, so our work to date. The Health Center Foundation has been working diligently to lay the groundwork and test the feasibility of a health center on Bowen Island. So our work to date. We've had a great team of health professionals working on our service model to look at all the ways to meet our healthcare needs. We're trying to develop a collaborative model with professionals working as a team. The recruiting committee has had interest from a number of doctors. We've had, besides our own island doctor, Dr. Schlogel, we've had interest from a young new grad who's interested in maybe working on island, and we've had interest from 3 other semi-retired physicians who have expressed interest in working in part of that team. Now, if that comes to fruition, if we get our building and that comes to fruition, we'd have 5 professionals that are all have expressed an interest in being able to provide 24 hours, 7 days a week health care, because they'll be taking turns. We also hope to have a room equipped for urgent care. So things like stitches, bladder infections, asthma attacks, croup in the middle of the night. Like there might be lots of ways that we can intervene so patients don't have to go into Vancouver. The service model will integrate primary care, urgent care, and then, as I said in the other slide, Vancouver Coastal Health Nursing, their public health clinics, allied professionals. We also hope to offer the physicians leases in a brand new, well-equipped facility at a rate below market rate, rising to a market rent probably over the first 3 to 5 years, with a manageable overhead expenses made possible through sharing of personnel and support services with other practitioners. We have developed a concept floor plan to guide the building usage and to provide for current as well as future needs. Based on our needs assessment for this concept floor plan, we see a short-term need for at least 6,000 square feet and a longer-term need for up to 10,000 square feet. Last fall, we began a quiet phase of our capital fundraising campaign with just a few of us reaching out to the community and looking for private donations. In the short span of 4 months, we have commitments, pledges for $750,000. to build and outfit the center. We had many other people, I'd say probably 40 other people who were interested in donating significant amount of money, but they were waiting to find out about rezoning. They had some hesitation about declaring what they wanted to donate until they learned more about our last proposal on rezoning. So I know they're standing in the wings, and we have lots of confidence that we'll be able to raise the amount of money to build this facility. And I'll pass this on to Tim.
Good evening. So if we were only going to take 20 minutes, the tail got bogged here. But anyway, as you know, we're here to ask you for a portion of the community lands on Lot 3. And I'm going to run through, first of all, a table here that shows you how the criteria we used to try and establish what an ideal site was. And we used the Gorman Road site as our kind of base because we had seen it as being very close to exactly what we needed. Where the other sites, including Dorman Road, fell short was ideally we'd like to have no partner in the building. That's because it's easier to fundraise if it's a standalone building, and it is faster to get to where you're going if you don't have to have a partner who may be going slower than you are. And the big one was the need for future expansion. Gabriola, as I understand it, is already regretting that they only have 8,000 square feet because it's full and they could use more space already. So we want to make sure that on the land we do get, we have the option to expand. And if we're talking about a 90-year lease, that expansion could be considerable over 90 years. We wanted it in Snug Cove and walkable for obvious reasons. On the bus route, obviously a level flat site is cheaper to build on. Surface parking was important because non-surface parking is hugely expensive. Ideally, we would like the land donated or leased to us so that we don't have those costs to deal with. And we need to have the potential for at least ownership of the building because donors would be reluctant to donate if we didn't have that kind of ownership at least. Ideally in the Cove Bay Water District and the Snug Cove Sewer District. So, as you can see, Lot 3 came up the big winner here in answering all of those criteria. So we went to our architects, Salal Architecture, and we gave them this little sketch here and said, how about if we see how much land we would need if we put the facility just south of the fire hall property. So they set to work using our criteria and came up with a number of options. This option number 1 proposes sharing the driveway just above the blue square outlined in red there. You see the 2 arrows. That's the driveway for the fire hall. And so we propose sharing that driveway so that we can share the expense of building that driveway, and B, we don't need to give land over to the driveway. It can be for the building. In all of these cases, we have provided for more than the required parking. Again, we're doing that because we figure that in the future we are going to be expanding. This particular one has the ability, in every case there's a main entrance off the south side of the building so that it can be reached from either the parking lot, or Miller Road. So this would answer our current needs for 6,000 square feet footprint. So if we wanted to expand in this option, we would have to build up. Building up is very disruptive to the people who are on the main floor, so we would rather be on a site where we had the option to build beside rather than up in the future. This option, the architects showed what would happen if we had our own driveway, a dedicated driveway for the clinic. And in this model, they have shown 6,000 to 8,000 square feet in the footprint, which would allow us to build 6 now and 2 later, but again, in the future, we would have to go up. Here we're sharing the driveway again with the fire hall, and we're showing a 10,000 square foot footprint. This one, I like the idea of the larger footprint, as I said, because we could expand. If we have a 10,000 square foot footprint, ultimately, you'd think you could ultimately have a 20,000 square foot building. I'm not sure we'd ever get to that need, but the Gabriola experience, as I said, is that they grew very quickly. And so we could build 6,000 square feet on here and build another 4,000 square feet beside it rather than above it. Or indeed, you could build a 2-story building now and a 2-story addition later. And finally, they did an option where we pushed the building to the back. If you remember that picture of the Gabriola Clinic, it was set well back on the lot. This has certainly some advantages for the users of the facility, in that it's close to the park. Quite a lovely setting at the back of the building. You do have a parking lot in front of you, but certainly that can be dealt with somewhat with landscaping. This does perhaps create some issues in terms of an ambulance coming in and out because it doesn't have a direct access. But again, these are very preliminary concept ideas, simply done to help us establish how much land we should ask for. So we have 4 options. 3 of them are about 0.67 of an acre, and the first option, 0.62 of an acre. The reality is, we're not really asking you to pick an option, because we're not ready to decide what we're designing yet. We would prefer the amount of land in option 2, 3, and 4, simply because ultimately it gives the community more expansion room. Our timeline, if we can get a building, if we can have a building secured, a site secured by the spring, we figure we can have a building open in January of 2020. February and April, site selection and approvals. May to July of this year, design, preliminary design. August and October, final design and tender documents. November, December, permit application and tender. And December, contract negotiation and award. Then in 2019, basically putting the building up and moving in and opening January 2020. It's difficult to be definitive, as I said, until we have a site, because we can't really start any work until we do have that site. Next steps is we really want council to consider this a highest and best use of this property. The community health center should be considered among the highest and best uses of the community lands. It will provide a level of security and peace of mind to islanders, especially those with chronic disease, the elderly, and families with young children, and significantly improve on-island access to primary and urgent health care, education, and Vancouver coastal health programs. And there is some economic benefit to the island. None of these are easy to compare to lost opportunity revenue, but they are quite simply priceless. So we have a suggested resolution that we respectfully ask council to consider, and I'll just read the resolution. The council agreed in principle to a portion of Lot 3 of the community lands being allocated for a health care center. The council be requested to direct staff to report back to a future council meeting regarding A, steps necessary to undertake a lease, suggested length of lease or other mechanisms to enable a long-term healthcare center on Lot 3, and B, an analysis of the preferred site plan option and other options as laid out in the feasibility study presented by the Health Center Foundation, and C, recommended approach and next steps. D, costs associated with waiving all municipal fees related to any rezoning, development, and building on the property. And E, costs associated with providing municipal water and sewer service connection to the building and waiving any fees or costs related to this work. And finally, that council be requested to consider this a priority project and direct staff to report back as soon as possible. It's as simple as that.
You really want to make it that easy on us?
So we're ready for questions, and we might then move to the question is, there'll be who feels it, if there are any.
I've got one quick question. Firstly, have you gotten your status with the?
No, we
CRA?
haven't heard from the CRA yet. We're expecting that any day, but
Okay.
they move at their pace.
Alison, your question?
The costs associated with the water and sewer, is that a typo when you say to the building rather than the lot line? Because it's normally to the lot line.
No, it's not a typo.
Ask for whatever you want. Cause nothing to ask. Any other questions? So,
Relevant to our discussion in the committee of the whole, I'm just wondering how you came up with this particular spot, and did you look at other locations on community lands, like lots 2 or 1?
Yes, if I go back to the
Matrix will show it.
here, lot 1, well, first of all, we looked at private land in the cove, and there isn't much, and I'm not sure it would be given away. On lot 1, it's further from Snug Cove, and what we really wanted to be was somewhere where it was walkable for seniors, for the people in Bowen Court and in the Snug Cove House. And on flat land, lots of lot 1 is not flat. It is on the bus route, but it isn't in the water or sewer district. And so for that reason, we moved on to lot 2, area 1. And I don't believe there's any potential there for land donation or lease, as you want to sell area 1. And we're not in a position to buy it. And therefore there would be probably no potential for ownership, and we wouldn't be the sole partner in a building there, because we'd probably be in a strata situation. Area 2, of course, council has plans for the community center. So again, we would not be necessarily masters of our own destiny there. We would be part of a municipal property, a municipal building, and that would make it difficult for us to fundraise, because donors would like to give it to a standalone building that's owned by the foundation. And again, area 2 is not particularly flat, and it's a hike to get up there for seniors. So that's how we ruled out those. Lot 3 was simply because there is already going to be significant work for the fire hall, and we would be just beside it. I had talked to some, casually to some of the housing people about whether or not they had their eyes on that particular spot, and certainly the people I talked to were more interested in a piece that ran along behind the RCMP and the gas station.
Just to add to that, Tim, also about Lot 1, in conversations with Docks on the Bay, and a lot of Bowen Islanders get their care in Horseshoe Bay, Dr. Hoffmeyer suggested that he might be open to the idea of doing a day on Bowen Island if we had a health center, so he could just walk in, walk out. but he'd want to walk on the ferry, so something closer to the cove would work in that situation if that was come to be.
Maureen?
I was pleased to hear that Vancouver Coastal Health was interested in offering more programs on Bowen if the space were available. Has there been any discussion with Vancouver Coastal Health about potentially contributing to a health center on Bowen?
Financially?
Yes.
Yeah, and no.
Why no?
You know, it's just not something that they do. They don't consider us a community that's in need. So there are a lot of communities up north where they do contribute to health clinics that are really, 100 miles from any kind of health care. And so they have other priorities for people that are considered more high risk. So they see us as, 20 minutes to Horseshoe Bay and another 20 minutes to Lionsgate. They don't see us as a community in need. And they didn't contribute to Gabriola, Galliano, Saturna, Pender. They all built their own clinics. Eventually, Gabriola got 100,000 at the end of the day, when they pretty well built the building. They finally contributed. So, at the end of the day, could we beg them for something, like maybe equipping an emergency room but in terms of capital cost to build the building, they've expressed no desire to talk to us about that.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? No?
We just had, there was one letter of support that came in. It also asked about the possibility if residential units could be incorporated in this, and I just wanted to
Well, again,
float that idea.
we'd prefer not to. That would push it up to a bigger building. It would require more parking. It would be a bigger land piece. And we're not sure how quickly those people are going to move along. We're quite prepared to, go as soon as we have a piece of land, and are concerned about tying ourselves in with anyone else's. How quickly can they go?
I just I was really pleased to see this come through. I like the synergy of this site. And I have to say, I had a bit of a oh my moment. I was up in Pemberton over Christmas, which is not too far away from Whistler, and coming in. They have a lovely clinic, and they're only hop, skip, and a jump away from Whistler, and there's a smaller population. I thought, oh, okay. So, no, I'm interested in see how this moves forward. I think it's a good site, and I like the fact that it is in proximity to the ambulance station, the fire station. I think it's a neat idea.
Anyone else? Okay, Ms. Weldon?
Just a thought. I'm wondering if you have, by any chance, talked to the ambulance service, because they're in a rental building across the way, and I just wondered whether they would be interested, because it seems such a good fit.
Well, we did talk initially to them, and they had just signed a lease. And I don't know how long that lease was, do you recall?
Pretty long, like 5 years, I think, but I'm not sure if I remember correctly.
Okay, I gather they need a slightly different space because they're the new program now, the community paramedic program, and they've got more things to plug in, and maybe the vehicle is bigger or something, I forget. But I just wondered if you talked to them since they've got that new community paramedic program has started.
Yeah. I have 3 or 4 times, so we've had meetings, and we fully hope that they will have, along with the community nursing office, that perhaps the paramedicine practitioners will be able to talk with the community health nurse about patients that they each have referrals to, and there'll be some synchronicity around that. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I think we have pretty general, let's put it this way, I will move this. I think that I'd like to have us pass a resolution that council agrees in principle to a portion of Lot 3 of the community lands being allocated to the health center. At this point, it's an agreement in principle only, but I sense strong support at the table for it. It fits perfectly with the mandate for community lands. It's an area that I think works well for the community, and certainly for cost of construction, you couldn't do any better, right? I mean, it's ideal. It's got your name written all over it. As far as how much land, terms of lease, servicing costs, whether or not the building can be one story or should be two to be in keeping with the higher density look and feel of the area and so on. These are all issues that we'll have to undertake, and we'll have to figure out what our process is for handling that. But as far, I'd like to give you some level of assurance that we're on board, and that we're committed to looking at it carefully. The fact that you need your charitable status, you need to be a foundation, you have a long road to hoe as far as getting all the rest of your pieces in place. And even deciding how much land we should give you depends a lot on how much land you can afford to build on, etc., shared parking. A lot of complications on this. But I'd sort of like to see us do something tonight to let you go away with some assurance that we are on board in principle. Could you speak to that?
I don't have a problem with number one. I'm as usual drawing all over number two. And one of the other steps that it occurs to me as I remember back when we did the lease to the gas station, I think we have to subdivide it off.
You may be right. This is, I think,
So,
one of the reasons it's...
I think, maybe we want to put in something about that we request staff to meet with the foundation to discuss next steps. Maybe so it shows that we're in agreement and in agreement in trying to move it forward.
Your staff. That's you, by the way.
Yes.
So we'd add that as a second one. You could tell us what the wording of that resolution would be as far as staff meeting with the foundation, or the...
Yes, I must freely admit that I had a hand in this recommendation, helping the chair.
Oh, you'd like all of that in there?
I think it helps give clarity to what the next steps are. I would say I had a pretty big hand.
Oh, I guess I know what you would like.
So now I've got to start raising my question.
So deferential to you, giving me the opportunity.
I will help any group who needs help with the recommendation, that's all I'm saying.
And all three of those?
Sure.
Well, number three, I think should be held off due to the fact that Daniel's bringing forward a report to our next council agenda about planning priorities. The other ones, if we want to go more general with the steps, I'm fine with that, with the understanding that these are some of the issues that we have to work through.
And
Yeah.
I'm not sure why we have to analyze the site plan option.
Well, I think it's municipal land, and the municipality has to be comfortable with the size of the piece of land, but this is where planning and finance have a big role as well. So it will not just be the CAO, it will be a multi-departmental.
Yeah. We have a fiduciary responsibility to use this land as wisely as possible. So to just say, yeah, take an acre or so, guys.
Oh, no,
it's not going to happen.
That
right?
wasn't what I was reading that to say.
No, I appreciate it.
That's where I was coming from,
Yeah.
the mayor's.
Yeah, my point being that you're going to get enough, just nicely enough. Okay. And it's going to depend largely on how much you can afford to build. Right, that becomes another part of the issue. Becomes a matter of our other plans as far as parking, how much parking could be shared, how that could be configured, all kinds of stuff like that. So getting down to the actual site plan, especially if it's a situation where we have to subdivide it and deed it over and break that parcel up. Anyway, all I'm suggesting is there's complexities that will become flushed out over the next months. Maureen, you want to?
I think there's consensus on the first clause. If the second one were just reduced to that council be requested to direct staff to report back to a future council meeting on this proposal, and the staff has the understanding that all of those elements are things that we would like to hear about.
With that.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to or would you like to?
Please, no, go ahead.
I'd like to move that council agree in principle to a portion of lot 3 of the community lands being allocated for a healthcare center, and that council be directed, be
That staff-
requested to direct staff to report
You
back.
don't need to request, you can just say council direct staff to.
Okay, that council direct staff to report back to a future council meeting on this proposal. So moved.
Okay, do I have a seconder? I do. Do we have any discussion before I call the question? Yes.
This is for the proponents. I'm just remembering that that your group had an interest in Lot 2 of Area 2, Lot 2, the strata kind of thing. I think you addressed it when you said have you stopped being interested in that?
Well, we looked at it initially, if you recall, that corner was actually zoned medical, I think. In the original zoning, I'm not sure whether or not it still is, but when we saw the municipality's plans for selling that piece for perhaps as much money as it would take to retire the debt, we thought we should maybe be hands-off there and let the sale go through.
Okay, I just wanted the clarity. Thank you.
And I just will mention that we actually had a couple of prospective donors suggest to us that we shouldn't have apartments over our facility, and that when we were planning, when we were on Norman Road, was too small. So I think that having a standalone building of a slightly more generous size may actually help our capital campaign.
Thank you. Then I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, it's passed unanimously. Thank you. One for our second.
No, me. 5.1.
How is he speaking to your
Very clever. We're on item 5.1, and I allow Maureen to put the update on her housing. Speaker.
Yeah. Plan.
This is no resolutions or anything, just an update, more or less an information item. Promotion of this.
We want you over here.
Just took my sweater.
So far.
I think that's unanimous. We're on this.
I think the breeze is going right through and underneath and on my languages.
Okay. Now that the rowdy people are gone.
Those health center people.
What a crowd. Are you able to speak over the noise in the foyer?
I'm not sure, I'll try.
I'm just going to pull the door here.
Well, the vent is closed. You see that?
They're going to see.
Okay, so I just wanted a few minutes to bring all of you up to date where we're at with the planning for the housing speaker program. I've gotten in contact with all of the...
You're gonna have to yell, Maureen.
Hang on.
Maybe we can ask them a little more.
Thank you.
Move into the snow.
Yeah, maybe go out and stove, please.
So I've been in contact with all of the proposed speakers that we had discussed when this idea was initially put forward. We have confirmed at this time Jada Bassi from City Spaces, and Jada, I'm suggesting speak at a committee of the whole, primarily with municipal council as the audience, because her topic is municipal policy tools that can be used to encourage affordable housing. It's a good presentation, and she's going to tailor it for a Bowen Island audience. James Forsyth from BC Housing has also confirmed, and I'm still waiting to get the confirmation and the name of the person from the Community Land Trust and the Nonprofit Housing Association. I haven't contacted Squamish or another community. The reason I was potentially contacting Squamish is that they're considering establishing a housing authority, and I thought it might be interesting to hear the process that they're going through at this point to put that in place. We also have an invitation sitting at this point with Minister Selina Robinson. Her staff got back to me this morning. They're sorting out her commitments, but it looks like she will be able to come in May or June of this year. So I've revised the schedule somewhat to accommodate people's availability, but the structure of this is looking like next February the 26th, we'll have a COW that's a review of the housing work to date on Bowen Island. And then the next council meeting, March 12th, there's a COW, the COW with Jada Bassi. And then the speaker program, we have the option of hosting it at Cates Hill. And the 2 dates I'm looking at are April the 7th and May the 5th. They're both Saturdays. The space is available. And then if we are going to the next stage, which is to have that community workshop, I was thinking, and this is only thinking at this point, that if we brought Minister Robinson in the morning to talk about what they're doing, and then potentially have a walkabout for any interested members of the community to get a sense of what the community lands are, as a whole. And then in the afternoon, we could do the workshop along the lines of what was done for Grafton Lake and for other lands in the past. So that's sort of where things are at, and I don't have any paperwork that's ready to be circulated, but by next meeting I should. I just didn't want to circulate material that was in serious draft form at this point. So happy to answer any questions.
James Forsyth?
Sorry, James Forsyth is our primary contact at this
BC
point
Housing.
with BC Housing.
Thank you.
Great work.
That sounds great.
Thank you.
Sounds good?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Okay.
Beautiful.
So keep firming it up. Thank you for the time for that.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, Daniel, you're up. So, Grafton Lake lands.
Thank you. So I'm here back again with Grafton Lake lands. So just as a reminder for council, this received a public hearing in December 4th and received third reading December 11th of 2017. So the bylaws allow the development of the Grafton Lake lands. But a part of the application and part of the rezoning was an application to exclude land from the Agricultural Land Reserve. And that application was rejected by the Agricultural Land Commission. We received notice of that in January. So what that leads to change is to bylaw 439 to amend the OCP and bylaw 440 to amend the land use bylaw, and the need for a new public hearing. So I have prepared amendments to both bylaws to address those changes. So bylaw 439 is the OCP amending bylaw, and it has two land areas that would designate land as agriculture, and it would take land out of land that's designated agriculture and place it into the service commercial area. And so both of those have been removed from the bylaw 439, essentially just leave any land that's currently designated agriculture in the Agricultural Land Reserve, leave it unchanged, and simply not going there. Bylaw 440 again sees similar changes in that this triangle that was in here was proposed to be moved into the CD5, so that Orchard Recovery Center zone, and so now it's just going to be placed in Area 3, which is the Agriculture Commons area, so it allows agriculture, horticulture, uses that are okay in the Agricultural Land Reserve. Right, so that's this top one. What that followed then was conversation with the Orchard Recovery Center, because that had been proposed for their expansion and proposed for recovery care housing with up to 40 guest bedrooms permitted in that area. So we talked with them about, okay, what are the uses that they propose that they would still like to see happen on their site and what's possible. So we looked at it a bit together, and so we sort of agreed that the reduction in the guest bedrooms, they would be permitted in their CD5 zone to allow 9 would meet their immediate needs, and up to 18 guest bedrooms, so 9 double occupancy rooms for recovery care housing could be accommodated on their site if they redevelop some of their buildings, in essence. And it would increase the height in that CD5 zone from 9 meters to 11 meters to allow them slightly better housing, essentially housing bedrooms. So what's before you is a motion to rescind the third reading, rescind the second reading, reread second reading for these 2 bylaws, and to refer it to a public hearing. So we'll schedule a public hearing to take place again for the full bylaws with these proposed changes.
Okay.
I've just got one question on
Yeah.
the CD5. There isn't one dwelling there already, so you need to say 2.
I don't know offhand.
Yeah, okay. One can find the original.
Okay. Did you want to do that now? As part of this discussion?
Well, if it was 2, you needed 2 in order to accommodate the guest, then would we have to go back, we'd have to go back all over again?
I can confirm that with the applicant, and if necessary, I'll come back before a public hearing.
Yeah, just need to find the original.
Yeah, since we're going to public hearing again, we have the option, or the opportunity to amend it. Okay, so we'll let them take it under advisement.
I know there is a house there, there used to be somebody living in it, which is where I have 2 seconds, like 1989. Dwelling use was permitted in the CD5 before, it didn't have a
Okay.
but dwelling detached was permitted.
Let's leave this with Daniel, and then if it turns out that it's needing an adjustment, they can do it. My bet is they've got it worked out. Okay, so we have a resolution as per 6.1 in our agenda, on our agenda.
I say move.
Okay, and do I have a second?
Do you want me to read it?
No. Do I have a second or? Second. Any more discussion before I call the question?
Just a question for Daniel. What happened to the orchard that they were going to swap the land on?
So they're still proposing it as a orchard, as they've planted it, and it is in our area too, that just permits the orchard use. What we're not doing is not changing the OCP. Part was proposed to be agriculture, and so instead it'll be just part of the Grafton Lake comprehensive development area in the OCP land use designation, and the zoning for it will be for essentially horticulture.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
So it's still proposed to be, but we're not changing.
Okay, thank you.
So all in favor? And that is passed unanimously. Good, thank you, Daniel. Next up, we have Daniel.
So next on our agenda is Lot 1. Just wait for Tyler to find this. So for those in the audience, we did today have a committee of the whole meeting to discuss this application. So we were good for 3 hours. And so I have updated this presentation from this afternoon based on the feedback. But so a lot of the proposed amendments in the report were essentially adopted by council. So I'll try to go through those changes that took place this afternoon, what's remaining for council to discuss. And I'll ask council patience to go through the presentation again. So lot 1, located along Mount Gardner Road, I mean it's a bigger version. Mount Gardner Road, south side of Mount Gardner Road, immediately beyond Vix, sort of encompassing, passing over the work start. It's zoned rural residential 1, RR1, and it's in the OCP, it's designated as rural. So council in November of 2016 gave direction to staff for 3 main areas, so tourist commercial up in here, residential up to 20 units in the southwest corner, and in this area, light industrial and artisan uses with secondary retail and residential. Then November of 2017, council received draft bylaws and they referred it out to a number of agencies, internal committees, and to adjacent landowners, residents, and for a public open house. So in terms of feedback we received, so the APC discussed it November 20th, and they gave comments on the various areas. So they supported some of the proposed uses, had a suggestion maximum building size. They supported the area 2 and area 3 and area 4. Transportation Advisory Committee met November 28th, 2017, and they moved 3 motions. So that the residential uses of area 1 be maximized, that designated pedestrian cycling path be included in the planning process of development of lot 1, and that the lot 1 transportation infrastructure prioritize active modes of transportation, including pedestrian and cycling networks. The Parks, Trails, Greenways Advisory Committee met November 21st, 2017, and gave a number of comments. So about the trail from Bowen Children's Center towards Vix, about Carter Trail going from IPS to Cleveland Park, and the waterfall again between Carter Trail and Public Works Yard. Increase in the development buffer between the Children's Center and future development. Municipal easement along Mount Gardner Road. A large tree near Guild Creek to be protected, impacting potential disruptive noise to the Children's Center, and the use of natural assets be considered, including bioswales, soil cells, and the creation of stormwater wetland. EDC met January 12th, 2018, supported the idea of zoning for light industrial, adding restaurants as permitted use, the concerns about its viability for storage and warehousing, concerns about road access, and considering expanding area 4 south. Islands Trust sent back their initial feedback, and they highlighted several areas that they had concerns, or not concerns about, but wanted more clarification on to be addressed at first reading in terms of how we meet the Islands Trust policy statement. The Agricultural Land Commission provided feedback. They noted that the proposed uses for Area 4 would require an exclusion application. They noted the time that would take. And I'm just noting here that their 60 to 90 business days doesn't include time spent on the application on the hold, or they're waiting for additional information. Staff held a neighborhood open house and met with the Bowen Children's Center, also held a public open house. So 6 comment sheets were returned from the public open house and are attached to this report, generally with a low level of support for the proposal. And then a number of letters have been received, including some that are on tables, so some are in the report and some are on the table. And so my brief summaries, so by far the majority of comments received are about Area 1. Many comments include the question of the need for light industrial zoning or a desire for a stronger focus on housing and affordable housing in this area. Area 2, general support for small diverse housing, and just notes that Area 2 would likely face high development costs. Area 3, general, support for it just remaining undesignated at this point, and Area 4 probably a split between support for maintaining the ALI line and support for tourist commercial uses. So this is then what happened this afternoon at the Committee of the Whole. Council directed a number of amendments into bylaw 433. I think I've captured everything, but reducing the size of primary buildings to 1,000 square meters. Reducing the size of Area 1, so having a buffer that would start on the east side of the Cove Bay water line, and amending the development permit guidelines in relation to the APC comments. In Area 2, so increasing the maximum unit size to 140 square meters and add a maximum average unit size of 115 square meters. Change the required setback to reduce setback on Carter Road and increase the setback from the south lot line. And to remove detached dwelling as a permitted building type and reduce the lot coverage permitted to 30% to encourage more cluster development. In area 4, so increasing the lot coverage amount to 10% plus 100 square meters. This would allow 500 square meters of lot coverage, so similar to an SR2 zoned property, and allow simply a single-family home with up to 4 bed and breakfast bedrooms, like in any single-family lot, and it's permitted in the ALR, so no longer pursue an exclusion application. And so I think the one outstanding thing I had from the presentation this morning is the idea that feedback based on area 1, options for council to consider about residential. So what I outlined here is permitting residential as an accessory use in area 1. Create a sub-area within area 1 to allow residential principal use in that sub-area, or to leave the bylaw unchanged to continue to allow live work units, but not residential as principal or accessory use.
So before this screen, just sort of asking around the table, we have general agreement on the changes up to this point?
Yep.
Okay.
We passed them already, didn't we?
Okay. So we're okay to that, only be this
Yeah.
afternoon?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, there were some changes that we made this afternoon that aren't reflected in the package that was in our agenda, so are we gonna get a revised bylaw? Like
I had drafted one.
Like we changed 1,500 to 1,000
Yeah.
this afternoon.
Yeah. So I've made those.
She's got that.
Yeah, but it's not in the
Oh, I see.
actual.
Yeah, so it's not in the package that came, because that was requested before this.
Okay, so we will pass that as part of what we passed tonight, and then...
Well, we'll have to say as
Right.
amended because the
Yeah.
package doesn't
Right. Right.
reflect all the changes.
Okay, so we're good up to here, right? So now, basically, I assume we should vote on these as a series of resolutions if somebody wants to pass it as a resolution on point, get it passed, seconded, have some discussion before vote. And we will get into Robert's Rules of Order, limiting debate, and responses and all that stuff if need be. Okay?
So we still have Melody's recommendations.
Well, that's
Okay, is that, should these not be covered as well?
There's sort of overlap, it looks like to me.
I would think that there's overlap.
Yeah.
Right, so that's why I'm thinking, that because we have these on the screen in front of us, they may satisfy a lot of what Melanie is concerned about as we go through these.
I think we have to ask council to listen to their questions.
Which way would you like to do it, Melanie? We could do yours first, or we could go through these first?
Or can we sort of deal with them each as a package? Because
Let's have a general discussion about residential use on Area 1 and see where we go from there.
Okay,
And then maybe-
fair enough. Yes, I agree.
But
So-
if I would like still the option to bring up the rest.
Of course, of course. So allow residential as a permitted accessory use in area 1, so that is the case now, right, Ken? Or we have it only as a
We
live
only
workspace?
live work.
Okay, so if we're going to allow residential, this would mean that people could live, in this case, on the upper floors. So would those be designated strata units? Or would they be a portion of the strata unit below and a rental unit within the strata lot? Has anyone thought that one through?
So I mean, I think this zoning, what I propose essentially is a separate, well, it would depend how you develop the building, but it wouldn't, like the live work unit, what we permit right now, what's in the bylaw, is very clearly tied to the same, it's part of this, like the same
Exactly.
unit has the residential and the work component in it, and this would be saying just to simply allow residential, so that would be if somebody wanted to develop it with rental housing above and below, you know, and the commercial component below, or if somebody wanted to develop a strata, it would sort of be allowed either.
Right. Now, I'd like to point out to council that the committee looked at this kind of long and hard at the time, and we came to the conclusion that because this is a small area of Bowen Island, this 5 acres that is meant to be our function junction type of space, where we want to have something that is going to build out over many, many years as commercial space. We deliberately did not contemplate standalone residential units. And if we are to do that, we do have to then define whether they're rental, whether they're ownership, whether a person can own just a house as part of a strata building that's actually commercial industrial or light industrial units. It gets quite messy and complex to try to figure out how we would integrate residential units into this. You had mentioned, Allison, that you liked or you had no problem with the idea. How did you envision it?
Somebody's got a space and they've got their shop in the bottom and they rent out the suite up above to their employees.
So this would be rental accommodation as a part of a light industrial strata unit.
I don't know that it necessarily has to be a strata unit. Somebody might build a building with three, like one of the buildings at Arlington Square, where there's 4 different commercial uses on the bottom and 4 different apartments on the top.
And do it all in a single strata.
It could all be in one building, single owned. And you rent out the top to the employees, and
So
maybe one of the business operators lives in one, and
so the residential component would be as a part of
a multi-purpose building with residential on the upper floors and commercial light industrial on the bottom.
So we're envisioning this as a strata lot project, and everything will be strata lots. So within the strata lot, you would have the ability for residential as accessory to the primary zoning?
My understanding of accessory means it's the smaller space. Primary means it's the commercial, and the ground floor would be the larger space.
Okay.
Because I'm not sure that live-work units work. My recollection and understanding, having been an occupant of one of the first buildings up in Artisan Square, was none of them really wanted to live up above where they were working. We certainly didn't.
No, well, a different model.
But no, it was intended to be an artist thing with the artists living up above and having their shop down below, and it didn't work.
No, and that's not quite what this is. This is meant to be light industrial buildings with the potential for somebody to be allowed to live in a unit if it's their workspace. That was the intent.
My druthers would be, if you want to leave live-work unit as a permitted use, but I think we should also allow accessory residential use.
Yeah. Okay, accessory residential. Daniel, can you do that? Can you incorporate that at this point, or is there quite a bit of language necessary around that?
I mean, the simplest would just say you just allow residential as an accessory scenario 1 and leave it at that. You probably then want to go in and say, we're going to make some of the other stuff. We'll say there's a maximum size, or there's a maximum number of units, or there's something, some way to limit or regulate how that's permitted.
Okay.
We've got that wording in area 1, that it can't be on the ground floors.
Mm-hmm. It already includes that.
Accessory residential on upper floors.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you just put a little star beside dwelling attached, and your accessory uses you put residential.
Okay, I'm going to go to Sue first.
Part of this is because I'm not as familiar with building development as many of you will be, so bear with me. It seems to me that 5 acres is quite a big property, and
Isn't it slightly more? Because we've got 8 acres and we've just enlarged the buffer zone. So I know we've taken some off. I thought we just
6.2.
6.2, thank you.
Okay.
And
that's a gross area.
And I recognize that one of the reasons that I voted to put this out for public input, community consultation, was to get that public input and look at it. And I noticed that the majority of the input received was for residential.
Right.
Am I right? That's what I saw, yeah. And so I'm in favor of including residential use. Now, what I'm not clear on, forgive me, is what is live work compared to what Alison was just what Councillor Morse was just describing in terms of something a little freer. And my second question is, what we talked about this, or earlier in the day, as I gathered, was one big building. So could we not also have other buildings, or was that just a maximum?
The 1,000 square meters is the maximum size per building. These will be strata units within buildings.
Okay, and can you answer my question? Thank you. I was looking at the staff thinking you can tell me what the difference is between live work and what Councillor Morse was just speaking about.
Sure, so live work unit, as we define it in the bylaw, I'll just read, means a single unit designed for and consisting of both artisan and or office use in a residential dwelling component where both spaces are occupied by the same person.
Same person.
And the dwelling component is the primary dwelling of the occupant.
Okay, and that's what didn't work at Artisan Square, and nothing seemed to happen, right? So it's there's no consequences, right?
One person.
No.
So, so I don't see the, anyway, either we want to put consequences in to make it work, or I'm in favor of freeing it up so that there is more either or and. Like I wouldn't mind a couple of affordable housing suites or whatever, accessible ones that were on the ground floor. I'm not clear why you wouldn't do that. Excuse me, I wasn't on that committee, which is, I don't even know the name of the committee, what's it called?
Community lands.
Community lands.
Community lands.
Thank you. So, apologize, but I couldn't find that information.
Sorry, Gary, or Melanie, I'm sorry. Did you want to speak to this?
Nobody answered my
Yeah,
question?
Yeah, I know.
Do you want to?
Nope, he says in a minute they're gonna catch it.
I guess what I'm getting a bit stumped on this is that we've had lots of feedback through the island survey. We've got lots of it that we're really struggling on the island with diverse housing. And this is probably the most in-depth conversation we've had on our community lands in a council meeting. And we're talking about light industrial. And I'm not actually against the use, but I'm just wondering where I get a sense from the community that their priority is for us to be dealing with diverse, affordable housing. And we're talking about 6 acres, and we haven't been able to, I'm not even sure where our BC housing is going to be located on lot 2 and how much. Like,
Of course, we're.
so I really would love to be able to get more into that conversation, because to me that seems to be the priority.
Yes.
And not light industrial. I'm not against light industrial, I just don't see it as where it fits in with our priorities when we have people who are struggling to find affordable housing on the island. So where this conversation is going, I'd really like to see more flexibility in Area 1. And so I would be leaning more to option 2 and also as a principal use, not as an accessory use.
Okay, so.
But 5 acres to be allocating to one use, which is light industrial, when we have such a need for diverse housing, especially for workers and everything. I just don't. So I would like to see some conversation going around option 2. Create a sub-area within Area 1 and allow residential use as a principal use in that sub-area. In this way, parts of Area 1 could be set apart from more residential.
Maureen, do you want to speak to this?
Yeah, just briefly to the BC housing question. There were, and this has been brought up in council meetings in the past, there were 2 areas that were identified by BC Housing as being of potential interest, one on lot 3 and the other on lot 2. The reason we're not having more in-depth discussion about BC Housing at this point is we're waiting for the provincial budget to come down. At the point when BC Housing is able to say more, there'll be more to talk about.
But we've never seen on a map those actual
But we do know.
areas. And we're only really talking about a small, maybe half an acre to 1 acre of land, right?
See,
Compared to And that,
Okay. So this is the area of land that we are talking about for housing, possibly something there. We've got land up here, we've got land above the RCMP, and on that, the knoll above the RCMP, going down to
do you know what?
Government Road is
I would be so
potentially.
thrilled to be having that conversation,
We
this
will.
conversation.
We are waiting
Now.
for, but, okay, so we had this conversation internally in the community lands. We gave the highest priority to affordable housing. We've come up, we have a speaker series coming up. We're starting a housing authority, we're starting a reserve fund with money. We're working with BC Housing. We've got the provincial minister of housing coming over to Bowen Island. We have a large area of land available to it. We've brought a sewer line to service it. So the area we're talking about now over in Lot 1 is a totally different conversation from our perspective.
And maybe that needs to be helped, we need that information to be able to form the conversation we're having. So how much land are we then looking for on this site?
So we have what, 5.37 acres? I mean, we've got more than we have money, far more land than we have money to build diverse housing. And we could build many millions of dollars worth of housing on this property. Right? If we get a $5 or $6 million project going on it, we can fit that entire project right in there. Right?
And that area is already zoned for housing attached, with, and it'll allow units and secondary suites underneath.
To answer Councillor Mason's question, I think going back to, we have a council resolution, I think I mentioned it this afternoon, indicating, I think it's up to an acre of land on either lot 2 or lot 3 be allocated for affordable housing through BC Housing. And I think this was a resolution adopted about a year or so ago.
Yes, we do have, a resolution, but we have chosen very deliberately, we feel that this is a much nicer place to live. That up at the top of that hill, part of the village, close to the school, close to the ferry, and lots of life. So we see that, we on the committee felt that that was a far more desirable area to be putting our efforts towards diverse and affordable housing than down on our area 1 of lot 1. Maureen?
I'm wondering if we could put the first paragraph up there to a vote and see where that lands, allowing residential as a permitted accessory use in the area.
And then work on the details.
Yeah.
So I'll move that we allow residential as a permitted accessory use in area 1.
Okay,
That's second.
and we have a seconder. Okay, any discussion before I
Yeah,
call?
let me really, I would just like to make a comment. I don't feel this is a fair playing field, you know? I feel that some members of council have far more access to information to see a bigger picture than some others.
And also,
it's
I
very
think,
difficult to be able to have constructive conversation that way. You're providing through these conversations a lot more information than has ever been available to date.
Can
I don't know what to say except to tell you.
see this binder? We were all given one of these, and
Yeah,
it's
but
got
these-
all the information.
No,
on the
these are
layout.
some of the conversations we've been having at the standing committee.
Any conversations that took place at the Mayor's Standing Committee that had substantive content came back to council as a whole and was shared. If there were resolutions that were required, they were passed at a council meeting. And this is the point at which to get up to speed. I don't think it's particularly constructive to come back to, we weren't informed, I don't know enough. This is the opportunity to learn.
I disagree, because that look at that information that we just saw there. If I had known that, that's not been shared, that discussion, to the rest of council.
It's not part of this discussion,
Yes, but you're using that to inform this discussion.
because you asked, but it really doesn't.
We didn't see them as being the same discussion, Melanie. We were not talking about affordable housing and diverse housing on this lot, right? So we can't tell you as part of this discussion something that we have committee of the wholes coming up February 26th, March the 12th. We're dealing with all of these issues through another process because we didn't see that use on this piece of land.
I apologize, I need to interject for a point of order.
Yeah.
We have a resolution moved and seconded. If you look at our procedure bylaw, and if you look at Robert's Rules of Order, once we have a resolution moved and seconded, debate has to be limited to that resolution itself. And looking at the following rules apply to limit speech on matters being considered at a council meeting. A member may speak more than once in connection with the same question, only with the permission of council, if the member is explaining a material part of a previous speech without introducing a new matter.
So I would like to call the question now. Those in favor of bullet number 1 up there?
The whole bullet or just the first
first
line?
sentence.
Joint number 1.
Yeah, could you read it?
Yes. That council directs staff to amend bylaw number 433 by allowing residential as permitted accessory use in area 1.
Okay, so all in favor? Okay, so that is passed. And that, and you can note that I am against that.
All right, so is there anybody else who is opposed?
Yes, sir.
Are you opposed?
Yes, because I would really like to see it as a principal use.
Okay,
So can we move that one as well?
so we have,
If you want to make that motion, you can make it, somebody then second it, and then we can make it.
Create a sub-area within Area 1 and allow residential use as a principal use in that sub-area. In this way, parts of Area 1 could be set apart for more residential development, while allowing light industrial development in other parts of Area 1.
So is the resolution just the first sentence?
We're all looking at each other. I guess it's probably just the first sentence.
That council directs staff to amend bylaw number 433 by creating a sub-area within area 1 and allow residential use as a principal use in that sub-area.
okay, do we have a
I'll second
seconder? Okay. Do we have any discussion before I call the question?
I just want to speak into why I'm in favor of this, is because that's what the community input was. Now, it's possible the community input would be different if they understood that in Lot 2 and Lot 3, we have 5.7 acres and that we passed that resolution, which I did remember. But 1 acre is a little different from the 6.2 acres we're talking about now. And the community consultation, the community is most interested in affordable housing, as it was even back during the time that we updated the official community plan. It was a dominant community theme, so I'm going, why couldn't we have this mix of sub-areas?
Okay. So we have a first and a second discussion before I call the question. Okay, I'd just like to say that it defeats the purpose of having a light industrial zone. If you turn your light industrial zone into a residential zone, mixing residential and industrial, light industrial does not work. Creates safety hazards for children, noise from trucks and traffic and so on. And the beauty of this area is that it doesn't infringe on any other industrial, in any other residential areas. If you go across the island trying to find a light industrial zone, you will find that there are residential areas right next to any area where you might consider it. So this area was specifically picked because it doesn't have any residences, and to now create a sub-area within it for residential development defeats the purpose of the zoning. So I am very much opposed to it. Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? Okay, and those opposed? Okay, and that is defeated. Okay. Oh, number 3.
No, we changed it with number 1. Has Daniel figured out how to do number 1?
Oh, let me figure out. Okay, do we have other proposed amendments to the bylaw?
Yes, I think just for further discussion, I'd like to go through the proposed amendments that I've made.
Yes.
So that council directs staff to change the primary zoning from light industrial to mixed use for Area 1, Lot 1. I'd like to move that.
Just a second, so I've got to get to the next item on the agenda.
I think we've already done that, haven't we?
No, okay. Sorry, so the resolution you would like to introduce is that council directs staff to change the primary zoning from light industrial to mixed use? Okay, do we have a seconder to that motion?
Well, it doesn't make sense if you're gonna make that motion. If you look at the
Councilor Morrissey has been moved and seconded.
Oh, it hasn't.
So now we can have a discussion, right?
Well, okay, so I will now speak against that motion because 4.3.2 says principal uses of land, building, and structures. Artisan industry, cottage industry, dwelling use, oh, no, area 1. Artisan, cottage, indoor entertainment, indoor recreational, live-work unit, residential is an accessory use. So to change, I don't know, want to change primary use from light industrial, there is no wording of primary use light industrial in this section of the bylaw under permitted uses. So speaking against.
And Maureen?
I think we should just go to the vote.
I'd like to discuss this. So I'd like to make a comment. Am I allowed to have Robert's rules?
You have made the motion.
Yeah, can I make a comment?
If I may
Yes.
interject for a moment.
Through the chair.
Through the chair.
You have made the motion.
Yes.
You have a seconder.
Yes.
We then move to discussion. Everybody has an opportunity to discuss it, and you have an opportunity to speak to anything that anybody said. There is a time limit on it if it gets to that point. And then that ends the discussion, and we go to a vote.
Fine.
So yes, you may.
Good. Thank you. Right. I propose this because mixed use, I think, is more in keeping with the community's line on this one. And I have not seen a great demand for light use. However, I'm not against, I actually support the uses that are within this rezoning. I just would like some more flexibility.
Okay. So,
And it's more in keeping with the comments I made at our original committee of the whole.
yes. Okay, so now I will call the question. Everybody has had an opportunity to speak, and it has gone back around to the person making it. But since you didn't understand that, you may speak one more time and then we're finished.
All I said was I second that. Right? So my question is this back to that general services part? Anyway, I just like the idea also of having more different kinds of uses, and I don't see why it's not mixed use.
Okay. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay. Motion is defeated. And then you have another one?
Yes, we'll skip number 2, that council directs staff to include residential. We've already had that discussion. But what now I'd like to talk, do we have sizes for our residential component now? Because my concern with the original 90 square meter cap was that it was neither small nor big. And we didn't really have any allowances for family size units. So so now we've got it as an accessory, we have it as a permitted accessory use. So I would like some discussion about increasing that.
It's your resolution. So you would make a resolution for whatever it is you want the resolution to be. We'll see if somebody seconds it.
Sure,
We'll see if
but
it's
I'm just sort of
supported.
saying, I think what we haven't had a discussion yet is about the sizes of the units, right?
No, but at this point, we're dealing with a resolution on the table. We've asked.
I haven't moved a resolution, I was just,
Would you like to?
I can, I was just
Okay.
trying to maybe, you know, have a
If-
friendlier, more discussionary tone on this one.
I-
But you know what, we'll go back to collaboration by resolution.
I think we're beyond that. So if you want to make a resolution,
Okay. So we now no longer have, do we have live work units or are we?
yes.
Okay.
They're in there too.
They're in there too, as well as our,
Residential.
Well, a live work
Yes.
unit is a
Yes.
principal unit.
Yes.
And we've defined maximum floor area of a residential component of a live work unit as 90 square meters, which is 900 square feet,
Basically.
which for a family with a baby is
No.
reasonable.
Well, maybe, who knows? But anyway.
is that 950, that would be
Okay.
956 square feet. Okay, so that council directs staff to increase the residential component of a live work unit from 90 square meters to a limit that would allow for a greater mix of residential sizes, especially appropriately sized family units.
Do you have a number to put there? Since this is a bylaw that we're formulating.
So yes, let's move it up to 1,200 square feet then.
1,200 square feet, okay. Do we have a seconder for that?
No.
No. Okay, so the motion is defeated, there's no one to second it. Do you have any more?
So right now, we are looking at the maximum cap size for any residential component is 950 square feet.
No, it is what it says.
Yes, but we've also now introduced permitted accessory use. So I'm just being clear that,
Again, this is go ahead, Daniel.
I was just gonna say, so by adding residential and accessory use, there wouldn't be a maximum. So in area 2, we're proposing that we have a maximum floor area for a dwelling unit and a maximum average for a dwelling unit of, so that's the maximum average of 115, which is 1,200 square feet, and the total maximum of 1,500 square feet or 140 square meters. So council could even just for now simply copy those over to area 1 and say that would be the same as for your accessory residential units. That's appropriate.
Can you run that by me again, Dan?
Sure. So area 2 has a maximum floor area for a dwelling unit of 140 square meters. So that's 1,500 square feet, and then it has a maximum average for 115 square meters.
Does it say they have to be on the second floor?
No, that's area 2.
That's area 2.
No, but he's saying copy that over.
So, or even, the maximum could just be that 115 square meters, which is 1,200 square feet.
But at this point, we
But
have
at this
added
point-
it with no limit on the
Yeah.
size of the units.
So 90 square meter, or 90.
So let's hold that one in abeyance. It's something someone may want to put a resolution forward before we finish tonight.
Is Melanie finished with hers?
No, I don't think so.
I'll work on it.
okay, so, I'm in favor of that, of making it the same.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
So the council directs staff to set a cap on the total number of buildings allowed for area 1, lot 1.
Do we have a seconder for that?
Well, you need a number again, because it's a bylaw.
I know. Do we have a seconder for that? No.
Do we have
Okay.
total square footage somewhere? Lot coverage is 0.7.
So
Yes.
what controls how many buildings we're gonna put on there? That's what I'm,
The lot
Lot
coverage.
coverage and
lot coverage.
how much of it can be covered by buildings?
The council directs staff to explore the potential of clustering light industrial uses zones around the existing works yard area.
Do we have a seconder for that? Okay. Do we have any discussion before I call the question? Okay, all those in favor? And those opposed? Have you defeated?
I think we've done them all now, right? Yep. Right, so we had direction, can I just confirm, we have direction for 10, 11, 12? 14, 15, and 16?
Exactly. Yes.
10, 11, 12.
We dealt with 5, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 15, 6, and 10. I can't remember anymore the second one we're keeping in mind for the future.
And 16, we're leaving for the cannabis discussion.
Correct, that's
Okay, so
Okay,
I'm going to go to Maureen first. and then-
I'm just wondering if for the record, so that people don't have to go back to the cow, if we could just go through these one by one and say what happened with each of them?
Ooh, do you know? Go for it.
Tyler, I think, read the recommendations that were made this afternoon, and then the ones that we just adopted. And I think that would be good if we're giving first reading to the bylaw today, to be clear what we're giving reading to.
Sure, I just need a moment to get to that. All right, so we read all of the recommendations.
The
from
ones
the
that were
committee,
adopted this afternoon.
including the points from the amendments, the bullet points that we did individually from the report, or just the ones that are related to Councillor Mason's?
I think all of them that were adopted this afternoon.
Sure. That council direct staff to remove from the draft bylaw number 433, the application to the Agricultural Land Commission for Area 4 and to amend the land use bylaw number 432 to include the rezoning of Area 4 as RSE. That council direct staff to amend bylaw number 433 by increasing the maximum unit size to 140 square meters, approximately 1,500 square feet, and add a maximum average unit size of 115 square meters, also 1,200 square feet, or not also, but the equivalent of 1,200 square feet, to allow some variety in unit size while maintaining the goal of promoting small units, and removed detached dwelling as a permitted building and reduce the lot coverage permitted to 30% to encourage additional clustering of units. That council directs staff to amend bylaw number 433 by removing detached dwelling as a permitted building and reduce the lot coverage permitted to 30% to encourage additional clustering of units. That council directs staff to amend bylaw number 433 by changing the required setbacks to reduce the setback from Carter Road and increase the setback from the south lot line. That council directs staff to amend bylaw number 433 to reduce the size of any primary building to 1,000 square meters. That council directs staff to reduce the size of Area 1 to allow for a larger buffer area for Terminal Creek and the Terminal Creek Trail. That council directs staff to amend bylaw number 433 to amend the development permit guidelines in relation to the APC comments. That council directs staff to hold a meeting at a suitable venue and time for island contractors and others interested in light industrial zoning of Lot 1. That council directs staff to incorporate language into the proposed bylaw that would support the growth of our growing knowledge base. Oh, sorry, that was not, sorry. Scratch that. That council directs staff to prepare a comprehensive community engagement program that is designed to be open, accessible, and inviting to the community. Locations and times that are convenient to the community, for example, farmers market, Bowen Island Community School, family place, fair. That council directs staff to prepare, an easy-to-read education sheet that provides background information on our community lands, as well as website page dedicated to providing up-to-date information on community land initiatives. That council directs staff to compile a comprehensive mapping package to provide basic baseline information for Lot 1, i.e. aerial photography, environmental mapping, topography, creeks, water courses, and trails, and produce paper copies and post it to the municipal website. That council request that the Mayor's Standing Committee for Community Lands provide proposed next steps to council on the phasing of the disposition of the land and how the land is proposed to be sold. For example, one large lot subdivided for strata. That council directs staff to have a future discussion about general services included in lot 1.
Okay, so those are all the things incorporated from this afternoon.
So, if you all insist on having residential added to
Okay,
area
so
1.
my concerns are, Daniel's got them. He's got residential use, including the residential component of live work shall be permitted only on the second story of the building, and another one on here that's shaded in gray in the package we got in our package. Amount of residential floor area in the building shall at no time exceed the amount of floor area for the other non-residential uses. So that covers it off unless we want to put a maximum size on a dwelling unit for accessory.
You got 1,200 feet downstairs, you got 1,200 feet upstairs.
Yeah.
So it won't be any more. If we
Yeah,
say,
if you have 1,400 feet downstairs, you got 1,400 feet upstairs.
yeah, that's what I'm getting at.
Yes, it won't be any more.
Yeah, but it's upstairs.
If at no time it's more than the primary use, then.
Yeah, and then we've got this maximum floor area of any primary building is 1,000 square meters, so.
That's a good sized home up there.
One of the questions I've had in my mind, and perhaps you folks have already discussed it, but if a big business comes in, for example, the Bowen Brewery that was here, could that then mean that there could be a big suite on the top if it was a big industrial floor area?
The way that it's set up now.
That it is now.
Yes.
Okay, because we have that target of trying to keep the spaces small, to retain the small dwellings, and it just seems to be a bit of a conflict there. I don't know whether we need to resolve that at first reading, but I wonder if anybody has any insight about that.
Or the other thing is, it doesn't have to be the same size, it could be smaller.
Yeah, but I wonder if there's an issue with having a big, like a penthouse condo in there. Maybe it's fine.
I just want to throw something in for discussion that I don't think any of us have thought about. I was watching on TV one day where they have units up in the mountains where they call it Toys for Boys. And these people have giant warehouses with a suite on top, right, out in the woods. And they've got their ATVs, their skidoos, their kayaks, their everything, right? And it's literally a subdivision of apartments sitting up with these beautiful views out over, and below them, these things that look like industrial buildings full of nothing but expensive toys for things. And this is real, it actually exists. So when you talk about having the industrial space below and the unit above, in theory, this could turn into a residential subdivision with big storage areas on the main floor. So just, yeah, right. Gary wants me to sign it up.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's the drawback with the residential use of something that we have intended to be a light industrial zone. But I seem to be alone on that one, so I'm not going to push it.
So I have a few questions on area 4.
Okay.
Did we just make it single family this morning? That was what I.
Yeah.
So I'm looking down in, again, what was in our agenda package, and you've got number of units, maximum number of guest bedrooms, 8.
Mm-hmm.
I thought
So I
we were
think
talking about 4.
So that again.
So what am I voting on, I guess is my concern now.
As amended?
So it'd be as amended, so it would be simply without those. Those are copied from the tourist commercial zone, so the number of guest bedrooms and the number
Okay,
of guest rooms.
but if
are
we're amending a bylaw, we're gonna have to change those numbers before we give a first reading. So am I changing the 8 to 4?
Just like you can only have 4 B and B rooms.
So I think
you can have
instead-
8 bedrooms.
Allison, I think by removing the guest house use, it removes like those that are specific to the guest house.
Well,
So
it
that
says
the guest-
maximum number of guest bedrooms,
Yeah.
so are we removing that from
Yes.
this bylaw we're giving first reading to?
Yes,
May as well.
and so I would remove them and instead it would allow home occupation use subject to part 3, which is where it would
So
allow.
cross off that whole
Yeah.
line that says maximum number of guest bedrooms. And the one that says maximum number of in-residence guests,
Yes.
16, that whole section goes. And maximum number of meeting course workshop participants goes. But, and maximum number of dwelling units is 1.
Yeah.
Okay, so that stays.
Yes, it's okay. It's under-
And under area 4, guest house, we've removed that.
Yes.
We did that this morning. Do we want to allow retail use? Yeah, I guess if they were going to farm, they could sell their produce. Okay. And do we take the bullet off in area 4 where it says home occupation use subject to part 3, except that bed and breakfast use is not permitted, so that triangle
That
disappears
instead
there?
becomes just home occupation use subject to part 3.
Okay. So, have we given reading to the, we've given first reading to the bylaw at the beginning of this, or no?
No.
So we should do that one. That would be like a really important part of this.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Where is it?
Okay.
6.2.
6.2.
And we haven't made any changes to the OCP.
You have been changing the tourist commercial.
But not to what you actually gave us in our packet.
Yes. So changing tourist commercial will be changed to RSE from tourist commercial to the map, as part of the bylaw 432.
On the
Yeah.
map, okay. Okay, and then in the bylaw itself, on the third page, the very bottom bullet under policy 161, it almost looks like a typo, but it's not. It goes with the description of lot. It just doesn't make sense. Lot of the community lands on the south side of Carter Road. It's the very last bullet above number 12, the last bullet in number 11.
Yeah, I thought that as well.
Yes, I think that should read lot 1.
Okay, and the little sort of italics description, where does that fit?
That's the Abbey Field site. So that's the third bullet point, has the footnote.
And it's in the OCP.
Oh, okay, so that's the footnote. And is there a typo in the next one in 12 by adding the clause lot 1 of the community lands? Are we missing the word lands in there? Because right now, number 12 says by adding the clause lot 1 of the community.
Yes.
So we need to insert the word lands. I answered that question. Okay.
Okay.
I think I'm happy.
Okay. I will have our CAO read the resolution.
That bylaw number 432, 2017, cited as Bowen Island Municipality Official Community Plan Amendment, bylaw number 432, 2017, be read a first time as amended by resolutions at the February 2013 Committee of the Whole and February 13th regular council meeting. I don't know if you want to sever each of these and do
So we didn't do resolutions for those last little changes.
Well, I think clerical errors.
They were clerical.
Yeah.
Do you want me to separate them? I think we can vote on them all at once.
Okay, that bylaw number 433, 2017, cited as Bowen Island Municipality. Land use bylaw 57, 2002, amendment bylaw 433, 2017, be read a first time as amended by resolutions at the February 13th Committee of the Whole and February 13th regular council meeting. That council refer bylaws number 432 and 433 2017 to the Islands Trust, the Agricultural Land Commission, the Advisory Planning Commission, the Economic Development Committee, the Transportation Advisory Committee, and Parks and Trails and Greenways Advisory Committee, School District Number 45, and all adjacent landowners and residents. And that council directs staff to provide the opportunity for input on the bylaws at a series. Actually, I take back number 4. I suggest we not move that, as we already have a resolution in place about the public
Communication.
So it would end at all adjacent landowners and residents.
Metro's picked up in that one.
No, it doesn't.
Metro Parks.
Yeah, no, we
Metro
should
Vancouver
yeah,
Parks.
we should add in Metro Vancouver. I would just say
In
Metro
3.
Vancouver.
So moved.
It's number 7.
Okay, ready for the question? Or are we ready? All in favor? Okay, and those opposed? It is carried.
I would like to thank Daniel.
Thank you,
for
Daniel.
all his hard work, and Tyler as well. They both put in a lot of effort today to bring us forward this evening.
May I ask a favor?
Thanks, Ben.
I assume before you send it to all these people, you're gonna do a draft bylaw with all the changes in it. Could you send it to all of us too, please?
Okay. Moving right along.
Oh, I'm on.
Staff reports. Staff reports from heaven. Okay, correspondence. Finance committee.
Gary's not home. No, Gary Anderson. I gotta get back into my thing.
Well, Councillor Morris is gathering the material. This is correspondence from the CAO of Islands Trust, and what they are asking of council is that council have no objection to the municipal tax requisition calculation.
Mark about that.
We're required, the Islands Trust is required to refer any changes to the policy that affects our tax requisition to us for comment. And what has happened a year ago, the Islands Trust restructured the organization to put mapping services and information technology services together as one department. Previously, mapping was a department of the local planning, and we paid a portion of mapping because they did mapping work for the Islands Trust Fund, which we pay a portion of. The information services or IT department, technology department, has always been a part of the administrative services that get prorated to the 3 major pots. They proposed doing this last year and didn't, and it does cause a slight increase. But from a realistic perspective, going forward, the duties are all meshed. It would be very difficult for them to say how much time to spend on mapping and to pull the numbers out. It has caused maybe a small increase around $1,200 to our requisition by putting this together. Best they can figure out. But because the person who used to be in charge of mapping now does some time on information services and cybersecurity and setting up meetings by teleconference and web-based. It's just one of those keep it simple, stupid things.
For $1,200 split amongst the whole island.
Yeah. So,
No objections heard?
Not
No.
allowed.
I do think
so
they're
I
looking
guess
for
we need a
it.
resolution to say that,
The council has no
recommend
objection.
that council advise the Islands Trust that they have no objections to the amendment of policy 7.2.
Did you get that, Heather?
No, I couldn't quite hear you.
Oh, sorry, Tyler. That council advised the Islands Trust that they have no objections to the amendment to policy 7.2. Little 6.
No objection. no objection to,
The amendment to policy 7.2, Little Roman numeral 6. BI.
I'll second that.
thank you.
All in favor? Okay.
Now we're into cannabis.
Great.
Oh, thank goodness.
Okay, yeah. Promises, promises, sorry. Okay, who's doing a presentation on this one?
I can if you want. I just, when those of us who were at the most recent local government
Leadership.
Thank you, Leadership Academy in Richmond, a conference for elected officials. Maureen and I were in the room when Bill Bolholzer, who's with the legal firm that's mentioned here, I forget.
Young Anderson.
Yeah, Young Anderson, gave a presentation. And it was fascinating to me because I think it's part of why we became a municipality, was to have more local control over what happened where and when, and community input. So when changes happened in legislation, the rules changed, it wasn't just big government telling us and we had to just respond. So basically, the rules around recreational cannabis are changing in July, as you heard. We can regulate production, processing, retail sales, cannabis, tourism. There were things that I hadn't thought about, like odors and possibilities of explosion from some processing, like creating hash oil. I heard from our fellow trustee from Denman Island, where they had issues like this come up before in land use, and she asked the question, could we look at setbacks and heights? Could we regulate agricultural use on ALR land? There's very little we can do, but if we make an island-wide zoning of that cannabis recreational uses are not permitted, then it allows us to spot zone, and for each of those to invite the community input around proposals like the one we heard tonight, or production, which tends to happen in high-intensity greenhouses with lots of lights that could theoretically come very close to the road, so we might want setbacks or screening. And everybody can think of places where the community might have concerns, like near an addiction treatment facility or near a school. And so I just wanted to put that out. Maureen found the notes that the mayor of Tofino, both of us happened to be looking at that, she was there, and put forward in that it would allow spot zonings just so that we could manage and control it for what fits our community and invite the public input and control how much of it. The ideas, other ones that I just wanted to float, were the idea of a cannabis, tourism cannabis lounge. What would these things be exactly? Could we have processing? I'm not sure if that's part of production. And so I just wanted to say, it's not that I'm against any of this. I think legalizing marijuana is a good idea, but there's going to be lots of things come up. The ideas of seniors smoke gazebos and things like that came up as well. So lots of things. I just thought that by following his advice to put it island-wide, that it's not permitted, then it allows us to respond to proposals when they come forward in a thoughtful and safe way. And so that's why you see this. I don't know if I got that all.
Yeah,
Okay.
if I could just add, before they get to questions, just a couple of things. The speaker is a speaker that Emma and Daniel also heard, and also heard him make that very strong recommendation that given the uncertainty that we were facing, come the beginning of July, that he very strongly recommended simply a ban, and then allowing time for communities to respond, as Sue Ellen was saying, in a more thoughtful manner. And I think that struck a chord with the majority of the audience, many of whom were quite supportive of smoking dope, at some point, but they were just concerned about not really understanding fully the legislative context. And this was prior to any information coming down from the province. It was just sort of pending when he was speaking. So after the conference, the Mayor of Tofino went back home and met with her council, and what they did is they initiated that process that Sue Ellen referred to amend the bylaws, and as she put it, to get prepared for spot zoning, community feedback, and a thoughtful approach to cannabis retail after legislation. And I thought that was a really nice way to frame the issue, that it's not that we wouldn't be supportive in some contexts, but just that it shouldn't be a thoughtless response. His main worry was that if we didn't do something like this, his main worry is that if we didn't do something like this, we would end up with many instances of non-conforming use that we would have to put up with. So if 30 pot shops cropped up right after things became legal, we could end up being stuck with a situation as a community that we really didn't want to have to deal with. And the points that Glenn made in his letter are very much in line with what Mr. Bullhoser, or however you pronounce his name, was suggesting, that it be a take it slow approach.
I think the total ban on production of more than 4 plants, and then having to zone it, get a zoning for it later, is probably a really good idea, because boy, it can stink. No question about it. And sometimes the fans that are used, if somebody decided. Now, I don't know that they could do it legally without proper licensing, and that's going to be a whole other issue that we're not involved with.
Business licenses, period.
But I don't think we should be trying to stop less than 4 plants. Right? That's the set for personal use, so just forget it.
Is that what the regs are gonna be?
That's,
Yes.
You can grow 4 plants, dear.
Is that what it is?
And many, there won't be any changes to.
Well, that's fine, I think we gotta get it.
So, my recollection of the land use bylaw in the OCP is intensive agricultural is not allowed, and that's greenhouses with lights and whatever. So that may get us around that, but I like the staff's recommendation that council direct staff to identify and assess the options available to the municipality for responding to the potential community impacts of the legalization of non-medical cannabis. I don't know that I'll move that recommendation, because I'll speak to it, because at this time of the night, I think we just need to.
Hand it off to staff.
Well, no, but I mean, maybe she comes back and just says, look, the Tofino approach is the way to go, and let's copy them, but at this point, I don't think any of us, other than the couple that were at the session, know, and what are we gonna do tonight other than ask them
To look into it.
to look into it, with what amendments we need to make to the land use bylaw.
Sure. I'll second that.
I seconded it already.
Good. So to speak with you?
Yeah, no, just, total ban, what does that mean exactly?
Oh, on cultivation.
Oh, it's just on cultivation?
Yeah,
Well,
cultivation without.
We'll see what
without
staff
spot
comes
zoning.
back, but it could also be processing, it could also be retail.
If you don't grow it, you're not gonna process it. I mean, you're not gonna bring
Well,
in
there-
truckloads of big plants to nip them on bone.
Oh, we got lots of bakeries on going, they might be making brownies
Well,
all
they
over the
might,
place.
so what?
So council has control through land use, so whether it's retail, whether it's production. And council has control in public areas as well, similar to the regulations for smoking.
Right.
And I think that's what what staff have to report back on.
Yeah.
I provided a number of links here as well, some of them courtesy of the two councillors sitting on this side of the table, but I would encourage you to read in it as we forward to planning staff the province's approach to cannabis legislation.
Mm-hmm. I will.
So they've provided the framework, but it will have, and I think this is some of the information provided by the two councillors who attended the session. There are ramifications, not only retail and production, but on bylaw enforcement, and this is part of what we need to report back on as well.
Yeah, I guess,
Awesome.
how would business licensing fit into all of these too?
Yes.
The city of Vancouver's putting rules on, no dark windows and all that sort of stuff, so is that the sort of thing we can cover off with business license?
Could be, yeah. There's an
We'll see what they
investigation
come up
needs
with,
to-
yeah.
I mean, when you look at the pot shops in town, I mean, they look like they're jewelry stores or something, right? I mean, they're just nice little places
They
with
just
little
like
glass
lured you
cases.
in with their little.
That's what-
Yeah, I've never been in one, but I just walked by them and
I think the retail is something we really have to watch, the retail.
Why?
Huh?
Why do you have to watch? the
I just
retail?
don't want a whole bunch of pot stores down
Yeah, I think you'd make enough.
there. I think it's supply and demand, but you know what?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you
You
know,
need an inventory, you need good stuff.
yeah, good cannabis tourism, I heard that one too, and I think there could be lots of things that we don't know about. So this,
What's cannabis tourism if you can buy pot anywhere?
well,
Go for a nice boat ride
boat
together.
ride,
Oh, you're not allowed to because
go-
you're.
Lot 4 could be the cannabis retreat. Bed and breakfast.
Oh, we're missing that one, we're missing the boat on
I don't
that.
know, all I mean is,
Yep.
as a way to manage our community
ice
in a
cream
way
for
with
breakfast.
input and with safety and with,
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
know.
I just have to throw
I
this
can't.
out there,
I'm
just
losing my
imagine a
words.
bunch of stone people trying to get on the ferry and Sunday afternoon.
You think the traffic's bad now, eh?
Going 5 miles an hour.
I'm just gonna say, I'm really glad Raj has left.
Me both.
Okay, all in favor? Passed unanimously.
And Glenn, we will, as staff, be in contact to talk to you about your proposal and the next
If
steps.
there's any questions I can answer, because I've delved into this a lot, and I do probably know quite a bit, at least to be able to point staff in the right direction for answers to them.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Just a question, who
Allison moved
seconded
it,
it?
I seconded it.
Thank you very much. I know it's,
Yep.
but I'm glad to have that. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, we got any Metro Vancouver information?
Yeah, we met, the board met towards the end of January, and probably the most significant thing in the agenda package was a report from the Climate Action Committee. So there's a document that's going to be coming forward for discussion. It's called Climate 2050, and it's pretty interesting. It's something that could be referred to the new Environment and Climate Action Committee, just for them to get their teeth into it. It's very succinct. It's a really good overview, and it's probably going to be in development until about 2020. They're just sort of building their approach to it. And then the second thing is that Metro Parks will meet tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.
Nice.
It's the first meeting we've had since November. So there was a little bit in the manager's report about the Davies Orchard. And it says in 2018, staff will work with the consultant team to complete the detailed design of the approved concept for implementation beginning in 2019. Additional work planned this year, 2018, includes deconstruction of 4 cottages in poor condition, preliminary orchard maintenance, and establishing a license agreement with Bowen Heritage for continued operation of the museum cottage. Staff will work with the municipality throughout the detailed design, permitting, and implementation phases. So it's moving forward.
That's all happening starting when?
Now, yeah, I ran into Sylvia on the ferry last week, so she was coming over for discussions.
Their budget's been approved and all that stuff.
Okay, anything on Islands Trust?
Yep, I can just report quickly that there's been a lot of uptake on some of the advocacy that Islands Trust has been doing. So everything from meetings, the chair has been meeting with Selena Robinson about affordable housing. He's been asked to come to Ottawa to talk about wrecks, abandoned, dilapidated, and hazardous vessels and salvage. And he's been asked to speak to Honorable Mark Garneau, Minister of Transport, about freighter anchorages and marine traffic issues, which will probably include oil spills or possibility of spills and pipelines and things like that. With some members of our Navy, wood fiber LNG, I'm not sure. But some of those issues are some of the things that the Islands Trust is doing for us that people don't usually see, so I just wanted to report on that. Next meeting is Salt Spring in March.
There's a meeting on budget finalization for the recommendation to the March meeting next Wednesday. Double booked for finance committee meetings. And I pulled something from the consent.
I know 3.12 is next on our agenda, because Councillor Morse had it pulled. And this is in reference to the terms of reference for the ECAAC.
Yeah. ECAP. Okay, I've got it. I'm curious as to, I've written all over the draft terms of reference. How time sensitive is this? I would have discussed this with the CAO this afternoon, but our meeting went overtime and my ride had to get back to work. Do you want me to go through all my
Oh, no.
issues?
My God, are you crazy?
I would suggest, though, we need to offer some clarity on our compost and feasibility study if we don't adopt these terms of reference. When I drafted these terms of reference, I looked at a number of different municipalities and looked at this to be our future template for terms of reference.
Yeah, no, it wasn't the template, it was more,
I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, I liked it.
they're in your, it's the mandate, duties, and responsibilities.
Okay, those again, and I think I've referenced it in my report, I looked at probably about 15, 20 communities. I tried to focus on the communities that were similar size or mid-sized
Okay,
communities.
well, let me tell you in a nutshell what bothered me. Is the very last lines of purpose say through the integration of principles of sustainability, sound environmental practice into all municipal functions and operations. And then we get down into E, F, G, and H, and provide leadership in implementing and public education on environmental strategies and actions. What environmental strategies and actions? The ones the municipality is going to be carrying out, or ones that individuals on board could carry out, and that doesn't match the purpose. And under G, encourage and support community-based initiatives as appropriate related to climate action. Again, is that the one that just general, or is that to support municipal functions and operations? So the mandate and duties aren't matching the purpose in the latter part. If it's all restricted to just municipal operations and functions, then I think we need to clarify a little bit about.
Well, I would say the committee can only deal with municipally regulated functions, so we can't take on projects that haven't been endorsed by the municipality. I think the committee can make recommendations to council.
So this, then, F is a little bit of a problem, provide leadership in implementing and public education on environmental strategies, as directed by BIM, would make more sense.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because, again, well, that was just part of the nutshell, because we run into this with committees before, where they've seen this and they've run with it. You know, build local environmental awareness. I mean, how does that fit with the purpose of that?
Yeah, and I thought I had that actually covered off by 2.1, that indicates the committee is a select committee of council that acts in advisory capacity to council with the final decisions in all matters brought before the
Well,
committee.
if I were on the committee and I were keen on educating the public, I'd say, look, C says we can go and build environmental awareness. And
Maureen and I would say, look at 2.1 in your terms of reference.
Well, they'd say Councillor Morris is gonna make it with the 2.1 when we come back with this. But anyhow, so as they're written right now, those are my reasons, and I can't really support it. And because I think we're setting ourselves up for some debate with Keno committee members. And on 3.6, the committee membership, since a lot of municipal operations has to do with public works, roads and stormwater management and all that stuff, not, so I'm just wondering if there shouldn't be a public works.
Well, it being 9:59, I think we should have a motion to give the $10,000 back to the Knick-Knack Nook, and let the CAO and Councilor Morris delve further into the terms of reference.
So I had my hand up.
Yes.
I had one small amendment that I wanted to make. Didn't feel it was worth pulling for now, and it was under the purpose, and it was, and should environment into all municipal functions, operations, and policies. I was wondering if that might help with a bit of it.
And sorry, where are you, Councillor?
And purpose.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where it says municipal functions, and then they would call operations and policies.
Okay. Did you have something as well, Maureen?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, I have skills, but I need to answer Councillor
Okay.
Morris regarding adding public works. I think we have a manager of Parks and Environment. She's the main staff liaison, but if you look at section 5.3, other staff may be made available to the committee upon approval of the CAO. Our public works staff are stretched super.
Yeah, I know.
So, but there is always that ability if it does involve something with other departments.
Well, I guess I'm just thinking, so much of it is going to be related to the stuff they're looking after in their annual work plans that I just wanted to raise that I think they're going to have some significant involvement in some of this.
And I will work with the departments and the committee to judge what's appropriate.
And I have another technical question. Did we, unfortunately, I didn't get a chance, I forgot to ask you. We haven't issued a receipt to the, yeah, when did they give us the money?
I'm not sure.
I mean, I'm not sure they've realized, are we on camera?
Yes, we are.
Yes.
They have a disbursement quota to meet. They have to use their fund to give them away, I think, because they're registered charities. So, and then there's anti-avoidance rules for circular things. So,
That's their business, and they've
well, I just,
written us letters.
That's why they've asked for it.
well, I don't know, I just
I think
don't,
that's their issue though that they need to do. We can certainly flag that for them.
I just wanted, before we write the check and give it back, to make sure we're not creating any problems.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm prepared to move the motion.
As amended, but do we know what the amendments are?
No.
With the
Will it be?
addition, oh shoot, where did I write that down?
I think what we added under purpose was
Well, yes.
to all municipal functions, operations, and policy.
Yeah.
That's how we had it drafted.
Yeah.
Under F, we have provided leadership in implementing and public education on environment strategies and actions as directed by BIM.
Yeah.
And I do believe that was it.
Oh, okay.
I think we'd have to do the same for C.
C. As directed.
No, it does say identify and advise.
Yeah.
But do we want them, okay.
I move that council adopt the terms of reference as amended for the Environment and Climate Action Advisory Committee, and that councillors Fast and Nicholson be appointed to the ECAAC, and thank you, ECAC, that council not proceed with an on-island composting facility feasibility study at this time, and that council return the grant of $10,000 to the Knick-Knack Nook to fund a feasibility study for an on-island composting with sincere gratitude.
And may I ask that we sever the first clause?
Okay. Let's just vote on the first clause first. Why have we separated it?
Because I want to vote no.
Okay.
So this is that council adopt the terms of reference for the Environment and Climate Action Advisory Committee, ECAC, as amended.
Okay, so that is the motion.
That's my motion. Do I have a seconder?
Yes.
You've moved it, I've just asked that it be severed, which means we just vote on it in two separate cases.
We still need a seconder.
Well, I thought it had been seconded and.
Now it has.
Okay, so the first part of the separate motion, is there any discussion before I call the question? Oh, all those in favor? Those opposed? Okay, and now for the balance of the resolution, is there any discussion before I call the question? All those in favor? And, passed unanimously. Thank you all. I believe we are adjourned.
Hold on, can I just point out something in the information items? Item 12.13, it's the request from Flinro for feedback on the rural development strategy. And there is a deadline of February the 28th, 2018 to respond. What I'd like to do is to give a push to this because they're asking for individual responses from community members. But I also think that we as a council need to have something in writing going back to Minister Donaldson in response. So,
And you'll take care of that, will you?
no, I think we actually need to talk about it before it gets taken care of. But next council meeting.
I just wondered, on the link to that, it does link to discussion. The first one was supporting, well, how could we support youth and things. So I'm interested to hear how we're going to get feedback. into that.
So if that could be on the next council meeting, that would be fabulous.
Do we have a link
Sure.
to that so people can have a look at those discussion questions? Because I felt one of them could be answered by some of the feedback that was in the vital conversations. There was talk about how to get youth more involved in the community.
They weren't very meaty discussion papers when I looked at it.
It's the first part of the engagement.
Yeah.
They're getting the ball rolling.
We are adjourned.
Thank you.
The chair is gone home.
Just to there.
That was very interesting. Yeah. I really enjoyed doing that research.
Well, it's all kind of coming, it's been, we've been waiting, like,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden it's all.
No, I learned a lot by just reading through all that material this week.
I wonder if we'll be able to.
Is that person all in his canvas?
Keep the smoke over there. Keep it up. I don't see how.
And there'll be a little bit of rush, people that don't smoke it, but. because
I never knew how to spell that.
There'll be a little rush there and then
Well, let's try it, it's illegal now, so I'll try it
The
now.
number of people who grow it illegally will keep on going.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
It is snowing up there.
The biggest outfit that grows it, they've got it down to under $1 a gram.
Is this the anytime?
That's not a retail.
You were given
No, that's cost.